Excited to kick off this session today. Today, we're going to talk about something that we haven't talked about enough at Invest Ottawa. We actually recognized probably about a year ago, a big goal for this year was to really start to instill the thought and the idea for early stage founders to build out advisory boards. We've encouraged aspects of this and helped with parts of this in times, but never really came up with a real formal way for our early stage founders to put this together. So we actually are doing three things this year, all of which today the circle will be complete today. We've built a playbook on how to build an advisory board. All right. Margo's been involved. Several people in the ecosystem have been involved. All of you are going to get emailed that playbook today. So if you're here and didn't register, just let one of the team know and we'll get you a copy of it. But that'll give you a reference guide of things to go and sort of best practices for building your startup advisory board, where to get started and all of that good stuff. The second thing we did is we've aggregated many of the amazing founders and executives in the Ottawa ecosystem who put their hand up and said they're willing to help and volunteer to help startups. There's tons of people out there, but we actually aggregated through a platform called Mentor Loop, where we have over 100 founders and executives who've said already, I'm willing to help. Have a founder reach out to me. So you can actually go in and search through this platform by industry, by vertical, by expertise, by whatever it takes. You can play with that, and we already had a lot of great connections happening. So that'll give you some place to start beyond LinkedIn of where you want to get connected with some folks. And then we wanted to start the conversation about building advisory boards and have some of you be able to hear from those who built amazing advisory boards. And that's what we're doing today with this kick-ass panel on how to build a kick-ass advisory board. What's unique about the three founders that we have, founder CEOs up here, that we recognized in putting this panel together is that when we started to support these founders in their startup venture, all three had already started building some type of advisory board or network. They were already ahead of the game. So, what we were doing was augmenting the support that they had already been smart enough, either deliberately or through happenstance or circumstance, had put together and started to have in place, and you'd be able to hear from them today. So as a quick intro, so they don't have to say what they do, and just to speed things along, we have Alok Ahuja from Trexity. So Trexity is a platform that does on-demand delivery for small, medium-sized businesses, be able to do same-day kind of delivery. You want to take a small, medium-sized business and give it its own version of Uber. Alok's your guy. Trexity is your platform. And then we have Sarah Sedgman, who's CEO of Learn Experts. So they have a Leia.ai, I guess, which is an AI platform that allows businesses to be able to take courses or complex information and turn it into a learning or course tool for their customers, for their partners, for their staff. And then we have Ujjainwalla from NAC. NAC's a platform that allows marketers, usually with bigger companies, to be able to create programs or campaigns rather, using email and landing pages. So, and all of them had built out advisory boards at a very early stage beyond where they're at right now. And then putting this all together is one of our top advisors, Margo Crawford, who has a lot of experience of using advisors, being an advisor in all sorts of different capacities. So she's really uniquely positioned to drive the conversation. So without further ado, I'll pass it to Margo and ask you all to put your hands together to kick things off. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Great seeing everybody here, and thanks to all of you guys for joining this. Got a ton of questions. We want to leave time for questions. I know this is something that I get a lot of questions about in terms of advisors, and I think we want to just dive right in. All of you have advisory boards, and some of you, well, both Pierce and Alok anyway, have boards. And the difference between an advisory and a board, I think, is something that maybe we should just start off with and just give your perspective on what is an advisory board and what is the difference between an advisory board, a board, or maybe a more informal group of advisors, and how would you distinguish between that? And to start off with you, Pierce.
Yeah, so I think, when I look at it, we have like a ton of what I would consider advisors, and those might be people that I just send a LinkedIn message to or set up a meeting with. I think when it comes to the board of advisors, it's a bit more formal, at least for us. We set up quarterly calls with them and kind of go into it with, we actually send them our board of directors deck, because all of them are on actual boards. So now, because we're new to like working with board of directors, we use our board of advisors to kind of prep us for our board call. And again, the board of advisors is much more informal than the board of directors. And then we raised our Series A in November with Insight Partners. And so that's who's on our board of directors. I would say that's like the most formal call that we have. And I would actually say that one, it's pretty like information sharing. It's not so much like consultative. It's more, here's the results and this is how we did. And then they said, how much did you grow? And it's never enough. And that's pretty much how that one goes.
Yeah, and Piers, you have one person right now on your board who's from the investment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so our main investor, Feline Housing, is on our board. She's awesome. And pushes us a
That's
lot.
great.
Yeah.
And I know, Sarah, that when we talked, you have an advisory board, but you just said you've got this huge arms out to here network of advisors. So maybe talk about the difference between that.
Yeah. Okay. It's working good. I didn't have a switch on my microphone, so I was hoping for the tech guy. So I have experience just in my past life to reporting to a board. I'm on a board. I have a network of advisors. And I would say right now with my company, I founded in 2019, I use mostly the group of advisors. And that allows me to kind of plug and play. So when I need advice on particular things, I go to a certain set of advisors that I know have experience in those areas. Maybe it's product. I just talked to one this morning actually on software security certifications, because I'm like, I don't know anything about this. Can you tell me which ones, I should have in place? Because we're starting to get pressure from our customers to prove out the security certifications, but it's expensive. But I've always, through my whole career, I've been in tech for 23 years and had a bunch of different roles before I started my own company. And I think I always had the perspective of asking for advice, getting mentors through my whole career. So it was really natural when I started Learn Experts to reach out to people and make new contacts to build a new set or network of advisors. And sometimes I'll call someone who I haven't talked to since 2 years ago, and I'll say, hey, but this particular area of the business really well. Can you help me? And now my team too is integrated into Invest Ottawa and some of the peer groups, which I see as advisors. I think Margo, Leah's on one of your peer groups. And so now my team also is starting to take advantage of that network of advisors. You hear lots of people say it takes a whole army of people to develop a company, a village. And so I've really embraced that, and that's what's helped us go fast. There's no need to learn on your own. Just learn from those who have been through it.
It's great. And look, when we were talking, you were saying, and we'll get into this more, that you also say no to people who are approaching you. And I think that's quite interesting. But from your perspective, the difference between an advisory board and a board, and maybe these informal advisors, what would be your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think Pierce covered it. Like, your board of directors is very formal, right? And you have those quarterly AGM calls, and you talk to them about the pulse of the business, and they give you really harsh and blunt feedback on what you're doing wrong. And they have a strong vested interest in the business. So they're obviously going to give you advice that's going to help push things in a very positive way. Sometimes it's hard to hear, but they know what they're doing. And what I like about the board of directors is, in many cases, your board will not be the only one that they're sitting on. And in most cases, they sit on multiple boards, and they hear a lot about what's happening in the industry that you're in. And they provide some really great insight. stuff that I don't take lightly and that I look forward to getting back from them. So that radical candor that I have with my board is incredible because it allows me to really get insight as to what's happening in the industry, not just in my niche industry, but like the tech industry, right? So that's, what Pierce said, very formal. And then your advisory board, what I love about the advisory board, and this is something you can never discount, is it's yours to create, right? You're not being forced into it, right? Where in some cases, when you take investment from a VC, they're like, okay, with this, we get a board seat. So you're like, okay. But with your advisory board, you really can dictate what happens here. And I've been asked, fortunately enough, of people have come up to me and be like, I'd love to be an advisor to you in the company. We love what you're doing. And I was telling Margo this, but like, I've said no. And I only say no because I need to make sure that they're actually going to provide value, right? I need to get more value from them that I'm going to give to them back. Or else it doesn't make sense. It's not what you want out of an advisory board, right? And the other thing I'll say is what I love about an advisory board is don't ever be in a rush to build one. You don't have to have one, right? And I didn't have one for a very long time. I just had, like you, I just had a bunch of really great mentors and people that I had been listening to for my entire, career. But then, because of the growth of the business and because of the name we've made for ourselves or didn't make for ourselves, it allowed us to get in front of some really incredible people. And then I started to identify, hey, this person would be really incredible to help us scale the business and be a mentor. And that's when I started to piece things together and actually build an advisory board. But it wasn't like, it doesn't need to be on the top of your list of things to do when you have a startup or a company. Like, I feel it should come organically, personally.
Yeah, that's a really great point because I think what's happening with a lot of the companies here is, people do have a network of advisors. You have people that you can talk to and speak to and get advice from. So it's that distinction between that and then what is the right timing and why is it at that time that you would trigger the concept of actually setting up a formal advisory board. So I'd just like to kind of get some thoughts on that what might be the triggers or the reasons why you would actually now activate. Maybe start with you, Sarah.
I think the difference between an informal set of advisors and then creating an advisory board is the informal set of advisors are helping you. Like, they're probably agreeing to be an advisor or mentor because they believe in you, they believe in the idea, they want to help you or help the company. When you say, okay, I'm going to build a set of key advisors, you probably want to pick, and I don't know what others have done, but, pick 5 or 6 or 4 or 5, like a small set of people who are really going to invest time into your business and care about the success of your business. Maybe they're being compensated somehow. A board is different. They have a fiducial responsibility to make sure that there's not risk in the business. But the timing around a set of advisors is when the business is growing, you need help, maybe fundraising, you're picking people who can specifically help you grow the business and they're invested and committed to do that. So it's a bigger commitment, I think. And you're picking people based on what are we going to do in the next maybe 3-4 years, and who do I need to help me get where I need to get? Different than that large network of mentors or advisors that might know, deeply particular topics that you can call once in a while and ask for advice.
That's great. Excuse me. It's again, that sort of like crossing that threshold from loose and so on. And one of the things I am curious about in terms of trigger, and we talk about having a board, is getting a company and your team used to the concept of having a more structured group rather than just loose and informal. So it's kind of a proxy for the board routines to a certain degree, possibly. Alok, what about your thoughts in terms of your timing? Like, what really are the things that says now it's the time, and as for an advisory board to formalize?
Yeah. So I'll be dead honest with you. There wasn't a moment in time where I was like, I got to do it now. And like I said, I was very fluid with it. And I had an opportunity as we scaled the business to get in contact or come in contact with people that I got to know on a personal level. And I got to look at their track record. And I got to see, okay, what has this person done in their past? And this sounds very selfish, but I'm being honest. I said to myself, what can I suck out of them to push this business further? Right? It's like in Mario Brothers. You don't have to use the flower, but when you need it, you touch it and you got fireball power. And so I thought to myself, when I'm 2 years down the road or level 4, can this person hook me up with a flower? And that's how I did these kind of mental interviews in my head around what can I extract from this human to help Trexity get to that next level? What doors will they open that I probably can't do myself? What insight can I get from them of something they've already gone through with someone else that I know will be valuable to us and to the team? And that's kind of how it happened. And it didn't happen like one day we woke up, we had no advisory board, and then a week later we did. It like they trickled in little by little as these moments in time happened for Trexity.
But you were recognizing very specific value you were
I
seeing
was.
now or into the future. So you were having
Yeah.
that sort of foresight thinking forward.
Yeah, I'm the type of person and founder that's always head in the sky thinking about the biggest thing I
got
can
a
do
chest
for
for it.
world domination. Yeah, and then for those of you who know my COO, he's the yin to my yang. He's very grounded. He's very structured, and he'll pull me down, and so we balance each other out in a very complementary way. So when I do meet these people, like I'm thinking 10 steps ahead of like where I am right now, and then I say, okay, how can this person come into this story I'm building and add value in 7 months when I know I want to do this? And
I love
that's how I would come to terms with then building the guts to ask them and be like, listen,
I love it.
that's how we did it.
I'll just add too, sometimes it happens the other way too. Like sometimes you have some advisors or mentors and they come to you, that's happened to me, and they'll say, if you're looking for an advisory board or somebody to help you more regularly, I'd be willing to do that. So that's another way sometimes that's great. Maybe organically it happens, but.
Want to ask the same question to you, Pierce. I noticed that you have your board and your advisory board on your website. And I'd like to speak to this timing thing, but, and also the decision around that.
Yeah, so before we raised, we were fully bootstrapped, and our biggest competitor was like on their Series B. So I mean, I think they had built a lot of external credibility within the market with having those investors on. And we're selling to like large enterprise companies, so that kind of like external credibility is really important. So my co-founder actually came from Trend Micro, much bigger company, and he had done like a lot of executive steering committees and stuff while he was there. So, he brought it up as an idea that we pursue, and I thought like, hey, this could be a really quick way to build a lot of credibility. And I think we'll talk about who's on our board, but we got 2 CMOs from like large enterprise companies that I think when people were vetting us to see like, is this a legit company, we definitely made that very like front and center.
That was a really intentional thing. And I think sometimes it's the trigger, right? It's just going to sort of push you ahead of that competitor slightly in terms of maybe credibility. So let's switch gears to, now you want to set up an advisory board, how you go about it and the approach to take. And what I'm interested in is when you're thinking about who you want on your advisory board, what criteria were you using in selecting them? And how are you balancing perhaps, maybe your more general or industry and so on? So Alok, how about you? What was your criteria in selecting?
Yeah, so I was looking for somebody who could add value in more than 2 ways. Okay, so I didn't need them to give me advice on how to run a business, and I didn't need them to give me advice on how to raise capital. I needed this person or persons to come in and open doors for me, because I know once that door's open, I can execute on it and the team can execute on it. And so it was really important to identify that person. But before that, when I did identify it, I needed to really spend time with that person and make sure they understood who I was as a human and who we were as a business. And after a couple of months, then I made that decision to say, okay, I think I want to bring this person on to our advisory board. So it wasn't one specific thing. It was a process. And like I said this before, but like you're interviewing them. Like it's their like they're lucky to be on your board, right? And you got to let them know that and identify it early on and interview them to the fullest, so that because you're going to be working with this person and you're going to be calling them late at night when you need help. And you have to make sure that that person will be there and not say, I'm busy or I'm at dinner. Sorry, I can't answer the phone. You're like, what the hell? Who am I working with here? Right. So really, for me, it was those things because I knew when I was going to use them and I needed to make sure that they could stand up to my demands.
Yeah, great. Here's, what about you? What was sort of the criteria you were thinking about?
Yeah, like who would look good on our website? No. Yeah, like I feel very fortunate to have had some really amazing people, either that I had worked for in the past or that I worked for and they had no idea that I was even at that company. But yeah, like someone like Rob Ash, my first job out of university was at Cognos, and like I remember, sometimes I might see Rob like in the elevator or something, like, oh, it's so cool. He's the CEO of the company. And then now to be able to work with him, and I would say someone like that, it's just like cheat codes to business. It's really amazing what he can bring. So I think someone like that, we had a relationship with him before working with him, and then a personal relationship, which I would highly advocate for those type of people that you bring onto your board where you know them, if you do. And then with Michelle Malo and Leah McMillan, we both, Brendan, my co-founder, and I both worked with them at Cognos as well. And they were both CMOs. So we felt like Rob brought a lot of business perspective, whereas Leah and Michelle brought marketing perspective, and we're selling a marketing product. So that was like huge for us to have. And then our fourth advisor, I was actually my tech chair. So Tech Canada's like an entrepreneur group, and my tech chair, Pascal, just someone that I really trust. Like to me, that's another one, like the trust factor that you have with these people, that that they're there for your best interest and for the right reasons.
Absolutely. Yeah, how about you? Because you have such a mix, and you were just talking about plugging and playing, and so you can do that. But then what criteria do you sort of say, okay, I've got these plug and play people, but now these are the ones I want on my actual advisory board?
I think the hard part about founding a company and being a CEO is most of the decisions that you have to make for the good of the business, but also strategically for your business. And so I think really thinking through, if I have this group of people, and I've created customer advisory boards as well, which also is an important set of advisors, because they're going to help you with getting into the industry and being your advocates. And especially if they're known thought leaders in the industry, that's going to help you sell the product. So I think you have to really balance, am I picking people for the advisory board or the customer advisory board or the board? Because we do have choice. Often we're told who's going to be the board member, but we can choose one or two. But strategically, how are they going to help my business? And sometimes you'll pick board members or advisory board members or customer advisory board members that can help you learn and the company learn. But also they're going to help you from a strategic perspective, get in through the industry, be an advocate, sell your product. And I think those are equally important, and you have to have that balance in the advisory board. And you mentioned saying no to some. So you do have to say no to some who you think might be disruptive. But sometimes you might accept those people as part of your advisory board because they're really influential in the industry and they're going to help you get farther with your business. So I think a really thoughtful approach. Who are the people? How can they help you? How can they help you get farther? And at this stage of companies, sometimes those are short term. And I think we're going to talk about at some point, how do you change your advisory board members? But you can't think necessarily 10 years out. It's like, how can people help me for the next 2-3 years? And then how do I change, advisory board members if I need to, which can be awkward.
If I could just add to that too, I think it's like, what are the gaps that you have within your internal skill set, right? Like, and use the advisors to fill those roles, right? So like for us, we didn't have a lot of like sales experience in the company. So like, it's an opportunity to just fill a gap maybe without having to hire someone.
That's a really great point, because when we think about advisory boards different than boards, where boards have this fiduciary responsibility, they have an oversight role, they have to think about the interests of a lot of different things. Your advisory boards can dive in, right? Like, whereas really your board should not necessarily be diving in, and they can dive in. And so being able to fill those gaps or leverage the expertise in a very direct way is available to you. So just thinking about like when we were pulling the playbook together, thinking about some of the differences between having loose advisors and people who are in your network. And it's more around the formalization process, of actually formalizing and structuring this advisory board. Can you speak to, what steps you took to formalize the actual advisory board? Did you put agreements together, et cetera? And the second part to that question, and I'll let you go into both because it's part of it, is compensation. And this comes up a lot. People say, okay, what do I have to pay? Do I have to pay? What does it look like? And so on. So I'd really be interested. And I'll start with you, Pierce.
So yeah, I think some people will just join your board to help you. And if they'll do that, I would recommend just not having anything formal in place. And then others, like this was our experience. We had 2 members who were like, hey, we'd love to help you, like, and we're just gonna do it to help you. We don't expect anything in return. And then 2 were, we definitely had to incentivize them to do it. And also we put like just like a 1-pager together of like, hey, here's what we expect, right? Like, we want you to change your LinkedIn to say that you're on our board and you're good with us having you on the website, and you're going to come to the meetings and you're going to introduce us to people. And then we gave them like a small amount of equity. There is no cash compensation, but like a small amount of equity that vested over 4 years.
And I think even with that more informal, we want to help you and so on, even there, I think clarifying the expectations and going through those steps is important, because they do want to help you. They don't want to sit back and just be a passive involved person. They're there to help you.
And I think that helps you sell them as well, because they're like, oh, this is like, they've thought about this. They have some clear expectations, and I think it helps you.
It helps sort of clarify that there is a clear expectation. It's not just volunteering, call me whenever, but there's the actual promise to do something. Sarah, how about you?
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I think whether, you may have board members or advisory members that don't have an expectation for compensation, I think it's still important to have some kind of agreement in place, a confidentiality agreement, of course, and a commitment to a set of expectations. Like, even if I'm asking you to commit to a meeting a month and then help us over time, I think formalizing that is important. If you can compensate, I think it is important. I'm on a tech board of a company that's scaling, and they don't have a lot to give, but they did compensate the board members. I think that's a nice, gesture of your commitment back to them. And they're going to probably, be committed and really work to help you drive towards success. And then there's, people, some of the advisory board might actually help do some work for you. So I don't know if you have that, but they have the skill set that you need, and a scaling company, you don't always have the ability to hire really experienced people. So in those cases, you can use stock options or things like that, and they'll actually do a little bit of work as well to help you. So I have that on my side with a CFO that was a reputable CFO within Ottawa, who's retired, doesn't need to get paid, but compensating them through stock options, they're able to help me at a deeper level, I think, than probably they would if I hadn't given them some stock options. So I think it's important to formalize it, state expectations, and then go forward.
I think the interesting thing, I mean, in the advisory boards that I've set up for myself, even having the token amount, because, you can't necessarily afford to and a lot of the people you're tapping into maybe don't have to get, they're not doing it for the money, right? That's not why, but it elevates the relationship to another level of kind of thoughtfulness and seriousness and so on, that there's an exchange, and that's part of the exchange. Luke, how about you on your board? Your advisory board?
I agree with what they said, and I can just speak from my experience. Ours is very structured, and so, as I said before, as the persons that we brought on, we got to spend some time with them for months before deciding, hey, we want this person to be part of our advisory board. And so then what I did at that point was ask them, and when I did ask them, I introduced them to the entire company. And so I went to the head of each part of the company. So I went to marketing, went to sales, went to ops, went to sport, and I said, how can you help this team? And I went to my team lead and I said, what would you want to extract from this person? And I'd allow them to connect for a couple of weeks. And then my team came back to me and said, hey, we've got some ideas we know we want to do. And said, great. So I pulled all those ideas together, called our legal team, shout out to Denton's, and we put together a document that basically said, okay, every quarter, you're going to do this for each department in the company. And we're going to give you a little bit of equity, as Pierre said, and that'll vest after every quarter. But we're going to meet at the end of every quarter and see what you hit on these items that we need you to give to us as a member. And it worked really, really well. I have to say, we just hit a year with Ben Mulrooney, and he's been an absolute rock star for us, to the point where he is begging to get into his car and do a Trek City delivery in Toronto to Drake's house, which we're working on right now. So he is now hitting us with ideas, which we
You
love.
don't need any security for that.
Yeah. And I give all props to our team, because as they've worked with him and as they brainstorm with him and as he sees how we think as a company and as humans, now he's starting to think like us, and so that's kind of how we structured it. And it works because I can sit here a year later and say, we got the value out of it that we needed. And now we've got somebody who's in. He's like, I don't want to go anywhere. I want to keep doing this, right? And so that's
awesome.
Yeah,
And they do want to provide value.
Yeah.
Like they do want to help. And I've actually, an advisory board that I'd set up, we actually had equity, and we made the vesting milestone based. So there was not a time-based trigger, but it was actually saying, okay, this is what we need. This is what you're promising you can do this, and we'll attach this amount of vesting to hitting the milestone.
Yeah.
And making sure you're really getting that value out of it. So speaking about getting advisory, the value out of your advisory board, let's talk a little bit about some best practices when you think about how you engage with them and how you keep them motivated and engaged, and your experiences with that. Start with you, Sarah.
Yeah, I think that's great that you just talked about milestone based. I do think if you don't, it's like working with an employee or working with anyone. If you don't set up expectations, both sides don't necessarily know what to expect, and time can go by, and all of a sudden, you haven't achieved the things you wished to. But I do think, Margo, go back to the question.
Oh, just how are you keeping them super engaged?
Oh,
like
super
how you
engaged.
communicate
Yes.
with them. And
So I was just going to say, I think communication is really important. And, with my investors, one's here, I make sure to put out a monthly investor update. And I think that that's important to do for investors, for advisors, for board members, customer advisory board members. And maybe you have different communications that you provide, but regular communications on successes and failures, how your advisors are helping you, if they're giving you advice on things or helping you, remembering to go back to them and say, you really helped me here. I followed your advice and this is what happened. Those are all ways to really keep people engaged. Advisors want to help you. They want to know that the time that they're putting into is helping. And then the other ways is actually, you can go so far as having them actually engaged with things like customer meetings or meeting with the team or having them join, a fun event, things like that. Connecting them, which of course we know through selling to customers and building relationships with employees, it's the exact same thing for the advisors. So I'd say regular communication and just involvement, I think, helps to foster that.
Great. Look, anything you would add to that?
Yeah, no, that was, she nailed it. I mean, we treat them like employees almost, like they're a part of everything. When we have a celebration or we have a down moment, we share with our advisory board. I send out investor reports. They're on those as well. Recently, we have a quarterly all hands. We'll go off site, and we invite them to do our opening keynote sometimes, which works really well. It really inspires the team and it gets them fired up. But yeah, just I'm an over communicator, so it's all I know. So I just over communicate with everybody around that wants to be a part and contributes to the business.
You're generally not going to go wrong with that.
What? Yeah, exactly. I
yeah,
treat them like
yeah,
that. Yeah. The board of directors likes that too.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. It's kind of a proxy to the board. Piers, how about you? Anything you
Yeah, I think they nailed it. I would just share, like, we did like a big grand opening of our new office this summer, and we invited a bunch of people and we had them all speak at that. I think it's just like making it real, right? We're on like a lot of Zooms together, but just showing them like in real life what NAC is all about is helpful.
Yeah. So we're going to just go to a last question. I knew we wouldn't get through all these questions, but we'll want to leave time for others to bring questions, but maybe just sort of a wrap up comment from each of you to maybe either a lesson learned, a really incredible example of a success story of having an advisory board, or a challenge that you think, okay, I wish I'd known this, or, here's something in setting this up, I wish I'd known at that point in time. So Alok, I'll start with you.
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. And I think I said this when I first opened up talking, but don't rush it. Do it on your own terms. Do all the research. Talk to those that have done it. Check out the playbook that's coming out, because I did skim through it and there's some gems in there. I wish I had that, by the way. Thanks, Nick, for being late to that one. But no, I would say that the greatest learning from all of this, and the one thing I'm very thankful, is we did it on our terms. We did it the way we wanted to do it, and I included my entire company on the decision we made when we decided to bring that person on to the advisory board. It's not just the founder's call. Remember that, right? This is a team sport. So if you're going to do it, let's make this decision together. And I actually brought my board into it as well. And I said, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. You need their signature anyways. But it's good to have their blessing as well. So I would say, don't rush it. Take your time, do the research, and have fun with it, because this person, like I said, is going to be a part of your business, and you're going to be working with them and talking to them a lot. And so you want to make sure you have a strong, fun relationship with them. That was my takeaway from the whole experience.
Sarah, how about you? Any lessons learned or examples of great stories?
Yeah, I think lessons learned is I do create a big network of advisors and mentors, and I've done that through my whole career, which has fast-tracked my career, because my perspective is, why figure it out yourself when someone else can tell you how to do it? But I do find sometimes I can be stubborn and say, no, I can figure this out myself. And I always find it takes longer. So I catch myself in those moments and I say, wait a sec, I don't need to figure this out myself. Somebody has done it. I need to go find who that is. But lessons learned, I would just go back to the strategic nature of picking the right advisors, the right advisory board, even board members, if you have the luxury to do that. Think, maybe you can't think 10 years ahead, but think 3 or 4 years ahead. Who are those strategic people that can help you get where you need to get? And don't be afraid to go ask them. Most of the time they'll say yes. So shoot for the stars. I heard both of you, perfect CEO strategic decisions, Ben Mulrooney, Rob Ash. Go ask those people who you think can really help you. Even if, they were your CEO. I remember seeing Rob Ash on the elevator too and thinking, holy cow, I can't say anything. I should just stand here. Right. And now he's, advising you. So go ask those people and make it a strategic decision.
Yeah, I love that you said that. Like aim high, Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, aim high for sure. And like Alok said, like they're lucky to be on your board and they're probably going to get a lot out of it too. That was something that I kind of learned after. I thought that they're just helping me, but in the end, I think they're excited to work with like a fun, fast-growing startup, especially 2 of ours were at these huge enterprise companies where hard to get anything done. They were kind of living vicariously through working with us. I did want to share one thing that I didn't really anticipate happening on our board, but because we brought 2 marketing advisors in, a lot of the conversations ended up getting dominated with marketing talk, which I just think when you have a bunch of different members on your board, you have to kind of think of the dynamics and is it going to get skewed like too much one way or the other? So that was definitely one of my big learnings. Maybe the biggest success and definitely not something that I anticipated when I brought Michelle on, but she ended up becoming our CMO, which again, I never would have thought I could get her on our board and definitely never thought that she would actually work at NAC, but this is, maybe a long term as you bring someone on, would you want them to work at your company? It is possible and it's potentially a great way of getting them exposed to your company and comfortable to the point where they do want to join. So
that's a great example. And I think the idea of that, there's people who are excited about being involved in a company, like and living vicariously through you or actually being part of it is a really, really neat concept. So many nuggets here, but I really want to give time to questions that people have. I know that when I talk to companies, the idea and the concept of advisory board does come up, and there definitely are questions. So I know they're out there. Does anybody want to start? Any questions? Thank you.
Bringing the board together, the advisory board together. So I just wanted to get sort of comments on that. Would you say like you must bring them together? Like how often? There's something I know you mentioned like you have a network of advisors. So I was just wondering how you would that. Okay. So I think the network of advisors is your choice. So I think you can create as big of a network as you want. And I have a lot across all of Ottawa, but across, even North America. And I ask them different things at different times, and it's very informal and ad hoc. And sometimes, like actually at the beginning of building our product, we brought a set of people who had built products and designed products together. Some of them knew each other, but some of them didn't. And we had specific sessions on talking about it. And it was really helpful to have that brainstorm piece. But that was my choice. In terms of an advisory board or a board, I think that needs to be more formal. I think you've maybe strategically picked 4 or 5 individuals that have specific knowledge. And I think it's important to bring them together because in that situation, you're working through specific things and you need them to participate together to move forward as a company. That's how I think about it. I don't know, Pierce and Alok, you might think differently, but I think one's really informal. You can choose to bring them together, but one's a lot more formal and there's expectations there.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I think it was one of the things you asked in your question was like, how formal does it need to be? I would say if you're going to choose to have somebody on your board to protect both parties, make it formal, right? You don't want to have that ambiguity around, oh, what are you supposed to do? And what did I need you to do? And like set it out in black and white, both sign, agree to it, and have strong commitments, or else you're wasting your time. So I would like, don't just pretend, oh, this person's on my board. We shook a hand and had a drink over it. No, like get it in writing and have strong commitments so you're both protected.
Yeah. I like the expectation thing is huge. But I would say that we got a lot formalized, especially in like how we did the meetings over time. Like I think our first ones, we just showed up. And then the next one, maybe we had like a deck prepared and then we started sending it like a day before and now we try and do it like a week before. But it's like a process, right? It's not going to be a Mona Lisa on the first time. You also just have to like get started somewhere.
It does. It's interesting because I find that it does start setting you up in some of the routines and the practices that you need to have in place if you have a board, and you probably will have a board. If you raise money, you will have a board and they will have those expectations to get materials a week in advance or whatever that timing is and have scheduled meetings. And something actually, Sarah, you had mentioned, I think it's important in the formalizing process is how do you offboard advisors? It can be a really awkward conversation or discussion, but when you formalize something and you set up even a term or arrangements, you're really clarifying, here's the expectations, here's the terms for departure, and it becomes a much more, or it's easier to have that discussion around the value. And I think you'll find in the playbook, it's what is really interesting, and it'd be interesting your perspectives on this, is that different advisors add value at different times in the stage of your company. You know, depending on where you are and what you need out of them, it changes. So you will likely have to change them. And I think if you just have those open conversations about, we need you for this, and it has a you know, a lifespan, and then you've got a mechanism now to activate that. And that's something I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, you nailed it. I think when you over communicate, that conversation isn't as awkward.
Mm-hmm.
And the term that we have is 1 year. So, and we meet every quarter to review that. And so at the end of the year, it's our choice to renew it or not. Yeah. Or if you over communicate, they'll know where the business is going. And if the business is going in a different direction than the value that they were adding, it's an easy, hey, listen, let's reconnect in a year or two, stay in touch, keep you on the updates, but let's just move on. Like, cool.
This one I think is really important. It may feel awkward to set a term, but I think it's important. I still am on an industry association board. There were no terms. So there were some board members that sat on that board for 15 years and they didn't contribute anymore. And then the new president came in and said, we're going to set a 2-year term. Well, that was like a massive upheaval. So, and then people got kicked off the board. And so to avoid all of that, just decide on a term that you're comfortable with. You don't have to do that with the informal advisors, but the more formal, just set that as an expectation to start. And if people don't want to sign up, then they don't have to, but they know what the expectation is. The other thing I was just going to add is if you don't know what contracts to use or how to set this up, there are good legal teams, or maybe you're using some legal teams in Ottawa that can advise on all of that. So again, you're not alone. You can go ask for advice too on how to do all of this. So I didn't necessarily know how to do a lot of those things, but they have the contracts and all of those things.
There are other questions. Anybody? Sure. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
How much of it is content versus, like, you know, the way you guys are structured? Like, is it more, like, you know, you have a board, you have a council, and then you have, like, a board member, and then you have, like, a council member, and then you have, like, a board member, and then you have, like, a council member, and then you have, like, a board member, and then you have, like, a council member, and then you have, like, a board member, and then you have, like, a council member, and then you have, like, a board member, and then you have, like, a council member, and then you have, like, a board member, and then you have, like, a council member, and then you have, like, a board member, and then you have, like, a council member, and then you have, like, a board member, and then you have, like, a council member, and then you have, like, a board member, and then you have, like, a council member, and then you have, like, a board member, and then you have, like, a council member, and then you have, like, a board member, and then you have, like, a council member, and then you have, like, a board member, and then you have, like, a council unknown unknown.
What do you mean by that?
So what I mean is, when you're bringing someone on, let's say, is it something you feel like right now, you're looking ahead, right? But there's also unknown unknowns and you don't know what to step up on, right? So are you looking at how this person has been there, done that? Or are you looking at them being able to say, hey, watch out, you're gonna trip on that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Yeah, that makes sense. Did everybody hear that? Yeah. So I think as a founder and as a CEO or as somebody who is involved in this company, I think it's your responsibility to be the person in charge of knowing where the vision of this company is going to go. Okay. And along that vision, you're going to know where kind of your bigger milestones are going to take place, right? You're going to know, okay, maybe in 8 months, if we grow to this and our EBITDA is this and our revenue is this, we're going to raise. And when you're bringing that person in, and I can't stress this enough, you're not bringing them in to help solve a specific problem for you. Like that's your job. They will be an asset on your Batman tool belt, right? Like they'll be there to assist, but they're not going to solve that problem, right? And so remember that, like take everything that person's going to bring to the table with a grain of salt. You're bringing them in and there's a 50-50 chance it could blow up in your face, right? You don't know they're going to be the perfect asset to where you're going to go, which is why I said, take the time to marry them and date them for a while. Date them for a couple of months, see if they really do add value and they care about your business.
That's great.
I think for the things that might be tactical or come up here and there, that's a perfect place to find an informal advisor. But I think thinking strategically out 3-4 years, like what are the things, what's the advice and the experience I need to drive the business successfully, and bringing in those right people, I think is really important. And I think Alok, you keep talking, like take the time to do it well, really think through. And if you don't know who to bring in for your advisory board, ask some advisors, like ask some people for advice too. So they'll help you figure that out.
Yeah, like one thing I would say is like sometimes I might think there's a big problem in the business, but what I love about our advisors is they'll point things out that maybe I wasn't thinking about, right? And I would actually say, to me, that's one of the most valuable parts is when they're actually like, hey, have you thought about this thing? Or like, what about this opportunity that isn't like front and center? Because I don't know about you, but I feel like I know the 1,000 problems that we have at the company at any given time. But when it's that external viewpoint and the track record of kind of knowing how things usually play out that I find super valuable.
That's great. Well, thank you. So, I mean, tons of things here. Like I'm hearing about having that foresight and having the chessboard, knowing where you're going and planning around that, being really clear about what you expect from that and formalizing that in a structure. So there's really good understanding that there's different types of advisory boards for different reasons at different stages of the business. So be thinking about that. Again, the structure and the formalization. And I really like the concept of, you have to trust these people. So maybe, walking before you're running and dating before you're marrying so that you know that you've got trust. You want them to have your best interests in mind and they're joining for the right reason, which is to help you. And so you have to have that sense. So making sure there's that strong trust. So I think we'll wrap it up. Alok, Sarah, Pierce, thank you so much. That was really great. I think great nuggets. Reminding everyone the playbook is coming out to each of you. It's really a great document with lots of inputs from lots of different people who've been on boards, etc. So really refer to that. And don't forget about Mentor Loop as well. I mean, there might be people there that you can use to build that informal network and, the advisors around you. So thanks so much.